Hello and welcome to an episode of Comics Coffee with Taylor C. Mitchell. I'm going to be your host today. You may know me from my audio podcast, Podcast Prevails. My wife got me that awesome banner for the podcast and in the studio here because I'm going to do more video content. If you might have seen my April Fool's video where I went over some funnier comic books, today I'm going to be covering some Twilight Zone comic books, and the reason for that is, on the audio podcast, I went solo this past week because my partner in crime is on paternity leave. So I went solo. I ran down all the Disney Plus news, but I also covered the first episode of The Twilight Zone from Jordan Peele. That's on CBS All Access, the new series. So today I'm going to keep up with that theme and go over some Twilight Zone comic books. And this is something I want to add to the Podcast Prevails catalog, if you will, some video content. So I'm going to be doing a lot more comic book reviews. And this summer, actually, I'm currently a student at Penn State, but my last week of the semester is next week. I have finals next week. After that, I'm free. So for the whole summer, I'm going to be doing a summer reading program with Taylor C. Mitchell, where I have a huge stack of comic books that's, put the stack up. It's probably pretty high, of comic books that I haven't read yet that are in my collection. So in order to keep up with those, because I don't want to just keep accumulating comic books and never reading them, I have some more coming in the mail here, so whenever I get all those in the mail, I'll have the whole stack ready, and I'll do a video on those. So early May, I'm going to release a video of my summer reading program of all the books I'm going to read this summer, so that you can follow along too if you want to go out and purchase those books, or if you already have them and you need to read them, or if you just want to provide your thoughts on them because you already have read them. And then throughout the summer, I'll be doing one video at a time covering each book as I read them. And it'll be a fun way for you to join along with me, or if you want to do your own summer reading program. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what books you're reading. I always love comic book recommendations from people. It's just such a great medium, and there's such a variety of genres. It's great to hear from other people. So today I'm going to be covering The Twilight Zone. Let's do this in order here. Yeah, that's the first one. Okay. Specifically the 12-issue run from J. Michael Straczynski that he did for Dynamite Comics. And it was released between December of 2011 through February of 2000. Wait, no, I got that wrong. Sorry, December of 2013 through February of 2015. It's a 12-issue run, not that long. It is collected in 3 trade paperbacks, and they all have a cover price of $15.99 a piece. However, I got each one of them for like a couple bucks at Half Price Books. They're super cheap there, and they had like a whole bunch of copies of these. So I don't know if like Dynamite Comics unloaded a bunch of them at Half Price Books or whatever. They all feel very brand new too. They don't look like they've been read. So maybe go to your Half Price Books and you can find them for super cheap. So the entire run was written by J. Michael Straczynski, which you might know him from a plethora of things. I know in the comic book world, I've read his Supreme Power run from back in the Max Marvel series. And I really did enjoy that. It had a Hyperion as the main character, and he's kind of like an analog of Superman. I'm not familiar with any of the Supreme Power, or Squadron Supreme, I think is what they were called back in the day. Not familiar with any of that old mythology, but this J. Michael Straczynski run in particular I did like. And then also you might know him from TV. He worked on the 80s Twilight Zone series quite a bit. And then in the 90s, he launched Babylon 5, which is a highly revered series. And it had a fantastic premise to where he wanted it to be a novel on screen. So each episode would be a chapter of a novel. And he ended up writing 92 of the 110 episodes of Babylon 5, plus the 5 movies in addition to that. He wrote all those. But he was like the showrunner too, so I'm sure he had a hand in those other 18 or so episodes. However, it was an interesting premise and kind of a risky thing for TV because Babylon 5, like I said, each episode is going to be a chapter. So in a typical TV show, they kind of have to reintroduce the characters and the premise every episode at the beginning, just in case there's new viewers that have never watched an episode that want to jump in and get into the series. However, Straczynski didn't want it to be like that. He wanted you to kind of have to do your homework and watch every episode from beginning to end, which again is risky for TV networks because they want as many new viewers as possible and it's kind of shies away from that possibility. But that's an interesting thing that he worked on Babylon 5 with that premise, because Twilight Zone has like an opposite premise. The old Twilight Zone series from 1959 by Rod Serling was an anthology show, to where every episode was a completely new story with completely new characters, never tied in with each other ever. So you can jump in and pilot in on any episode of Twilight Zone and be able to enjoy it without having any other previous knowledge of watching Twilight Zone. That's a great thing about it. Like, you can go on Netflix right now and throw in episode 23 of season 2 and enjoy it without having ever watched another Twilight Zone episode. So it's interesting that he would work on that in the 80s and then go on to make Babylon 5. But Babylon 5 is definitely his magnum opus, I believe, and that's one of his high points of his career. And unfortunately, you may know him from his run on The Amazing Spider-Man. He wrote The Amazing Spider-Man from 2001 to 2007. He was like the main writer of that series, and it included One More Day, which was one of the most critically panned versions of Spider-Man, or stories of Spider-Man in history. So Straczynski's definitely had its highs and lows. But as a comic book writer, I've always enjoyed his work, and actually, because of my obsessive personality, I've gone down a rabbit hole of watching Babylon 5. I just started the series. It's on Amazon Prime right now, and I'm enjoying it so far. So that's what got me into this. But this 12-issue run is actually really, really remarkable. So it starts off with Volume 1, The Way Out, and it covers a character named Trevor Richmond, who's a Wall Street investor, and he is like, Mr. Big Shot investor, super conceited, over the top. He's a kind of a playboy too. He's always cheating on his girlfriend, and always cheating his way through finances. He's made some bad investments knowingly to get ahead and put money in other places illegally. And at this point in the story, in the first trade, he knows that he's going to get in trouble. He knows that this is going to end in him going to jail because of the legal activity, and there's an investigation going on. So then he makes a deal in typical Twilight Zone fashion to where he can completely change his identity. He meets this one particular character that offers him the ability to completely change his identity, change the way he looks. Nobody would recognize him, and start his whole life fresh with enough money to get by, but not as much money as he had before. But he puts him through this kind of process that changes even his teeth. He can't even identify him from his teeth or his fingerprints or anything like that. Again, the hokey premise. However, he gets out of that world. But what he doesn't realize is that he was replaced by someone else that was trying to get out of their life. They get put into the Trevor Richmond life. So his original life, where he's going to jail, going through this investigation, has this girlfriend he's been cheating on. And so now Trevor Richmond, with a new identity, new personality, new way that he looks, has to watch someone else live his old life better than he did, with not taking things for granted. So it's a very good, it's a hokey premise, but also makes you think, am I taking my own life for granted? Or what if someone else was living my life? Would they do it better than I? Kind of thing. So that's what the first trade is about. And I'm not going to do too many spoilers, because I want you to be able to enjoy these books. And that's issues 1 through 4, included the Trevor Richmond story. And the brilliant thing that J. Michael Straczynski did was that he tied all 12 issues together. They all intersect and take place in the same world, which is kind of different than the normal Twilight Zone story. Like I said, it's normally an anthology that nothing ever takes place together. So in the second issue, which is called The Way In, so the first one is The Way Out, this is The Way In, it follows the cover character here, Diana Westby. Now, she's a waitress at a coffee shop or a diner in New York. And then she finds out that she has the ability, all of a sudden, to see things happen before they do. She can, visualize things happening. A lot of them happen in dreams before they happen. So then she feels the responsibility of having to save people and prevent these horrific catastrophes from happening. And then that's her story. She has to go through all that and make a decision on whether or not she can carry that burden and that responsibility of being able to do that. So that's Diana Westby. That's issues 5 through 8 in trade number 2. And then trade number 3 is called The Way Back. So you have The Way Out, The Way In, and The Way Back. And this covers Ben Chambers. He's a private investigator, and he's popping up. You saw him pop up a few times in these first two trades. But he's a private investigator that's trying to make a difference for once in his life. He feels like he hasn't made a big difference in his life, and he realizes that he can finally, by saving one person in the world who would then go on to, as a domino effect, save all these other people. And eventually ends with him making the ultimate sacrifice. But the brilliant thing about this entire series, and I do recommend that if you have any sort of inclination of wanting to get into these Twilight Zone books, that you buy all three trades. Because like I said, all the stories intersect, and you don't get the complete story with all of them. I don't feel like you do, at least. Like, yes, trade 1, you get the entire Trevor Richmond story. Trade 2, you get the entire Dinah Westby story, and then Ben Chambers in this one. But to really appreciate the genius of what Straczynski did in this trilogy, I suppose you can call it, or 12-issue run, is that he tied them all together. Like, you'll be reading the third trade, and you'll notice a panel that took place in the first trade. And it might even be from a different angle. Like, they might even done the artwork from a different angle. And the artwork is fantastic in these. I should probably give credit to all the artists, right? So, the entire 12-issue run is written by J. Michael Straczynski, illustrated by, I don't know how to say his name, but Guillermo Villanova, and then then colored by Vinicius Andrade, and then lettered by Rob Steen, and the cover work is done by Francesco Francavilla. So the artwork is really fantastic too, and I love how in the inside covers here you get like the Twilight Zone, like the old classic like star background effect with the old font. They kind of just keep up that theme. Even this first blank page is just like the Twilight Zone effect. It really enters you into the Twilight Zone. You can like hear Rod Serling doing his narration of the poetry that he always did. But yeah, you'll see like panels pop up from like previous trades. That's why I also recommend reading it all in like one in a row. Like, don't like read, trade one and then like months later try to read trade 2. Like, it's best to be read all together. And it's really easy sitting. I think I read them all in like a couple afternoons. I mean, it didn't really take me that long at all. It's only 12 issues. And it's just so enjoyable to see those things pop up in those little Easter eggs that are created by J. Michael Straczynski. So I highly recommend this series. I recommend this series for fans of Twilight Zone for sure. If you're any sort of fan of Twilight Zone. If you've ever been a fan of J. Michael Straczynski's work, any of it, because again, like, he has highs and lows like every other writer. But if you have enjoyed any of his work, I think this is one of his best stuff, or some of his best stuff that I've read from him. So definitely, if you're a fan of J. Michael Straczynski, if you're a fan of any books that like make you think or has twists and turns kind of thing, like, definitely it's up for that too. And that's the great thing about the Twilight Zone series. They tried bringing it back a few times. Like, they had the 59 series with Serling, which is obviously like the coup de grace, like the magna opus of Twilight Zone, what all the originals love. And then there's the 80s series, which didn't really get a lot of praise. It only lasted, I think, a couple seasons. And right around the same time, they had the movie that came out, which was like, had like 4 or 5 different stories in it. And Steven Spielberg even directed one of the stories for that. And then in the early 2000s, they had Forrest Whitaker was a narrator. He kind of took place of like the Rod Serling. And that series was on UPN, I believe, and it only lasted 1 season. And now Jordan Peele is running with the new series in the 2019 series. And it's 4 episodes deep as of now. And yeah, I think he's doing a great job. I think he's got this finger on the pulse and he's hitting the right notes of what Rod Serling's original project was of the Twilight Zone. So I recommend watching that. It's only available on CBS All Access, and like I said, on Podcast Prevails, episode 35, the most recent one, I reviewed that episode for you guys. So go check that out too. And I kind of wish these were collected in like a bigger, like even like an omnibus or a hardcover, where they have the whole 12-issue run, because, like I said, that's the best way to enjoy these. But I don't see that happening, because it does seem like Dynamite kind of unloaded a bunch of these at once into some discounted stores and that kind of thing. So I don't think we'll see that. But I do want to see more Twilight Zone books collected too, because they started writing comic books for the Twilight Zone back in like the 60s when the original series was coming out, and some of them were adapted based on some episodes of the show. Some of them were new stories, but that original run of comics lasted 20 years longer than the original Rod Serling TV show. So they have the plethora of all these issues and content of Twilight Zone comic books that can be collected. I think I can only find in print right now one other trade paperback of actually a true Twilight Zone book. It's something in Substance, I believe. And then there's Shadow in the Twilight Zone, which is like the old pulp comic hero, the Shadow, the one that Alec Baldwin portrayed in the 1994 movie. There's a trade paperback of that too. I forget who wrote that one, but that's a more recent run too. But that's it. So I think I don't even know who owns the rights to it. I don't know if Dynamite still has like the license to do Twilight Zone, but I'd love to see some big collected editions of those old Twilight Zone books. I think it'd just be so much fun to read through those. It'd be kind of like the EC horror comics where it's like an anthology and every issue is a different story. You could put it down for a few weeks and then pick it back up, that sort of thing. But that's a Twilight Zone. It's a series that I've fallen in love with over the last year or so. Highly recommend the trades that you can find super cheap from Dynamite Comics. I think that's all I have. Yeah. So like I said, early May, I'm going to come out with my summer reading program. The huge list of books that I'll be reading for the oncoming summer. And the books, and a big preview of all the videos that I'll be coming out with, because I'm going to come out with a video review of each of those books. And you can find me on Twitter at Mr. TC Mitchell. Find me on Instagram at Taylor C. Mitchell. Find my podcast. Just search for Podcast Prevails on Facebook or Twitter or iTunes. And yeah, enjoy your coffee and have a great day.